All right, hello and welcome everybody to the CDBG and ESG How to Apply workshop. My name is Julissa Villalobos, the Grants Analyst for EDD, joined by my colleagues Max Smith and Cruz Angel Coro, who will be presenting with me as well as Katia Pitts, who is helping us facilitate the slides. Um, just to let you guys know, this presentation will be recorded, and a recording of this presentation will be found on the housing page on the city website. This workshop is designed to give you all a high-level overview of the application process and hopefully answer all of your questions regarding the application. In the unlikely event of a power outage, we will record and upload this presentation to the housing page, and we'll be in contact with you guys on where you can find those links. To review today's agenda, we'll be first taking a look at the NOFA, then going over the application review process, and then next I'll take you through a walkthrough of the application in Neighborly. And then finally, we will set aside some time at the end to answer all your questions. So without further ado, let's get started.
On December 14th of last year, the city released Notice of Funding Availability, also called a NOFA, from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for a total of about $984,000. This total is an expected amount. This may change between now and the time that we're able to fund subrecipients for the program. These dollars are meant to meet the priority needs of the city in accordance with the guidelines presented by the Community Development Block Grant and the Emergency Solutions Grant. Both CDBG and ESG funds are used to assist low and moderate income persons, expand economic opportunities, provide affordable housing, and/or provide suitable living environments for folks in accordance with the city's 5-year plan. CDBG is tailored more towards assisting low and moderate income persons, while the Emergency Solutions Grant is tailored more towards homelessness services, including homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing. The process and timeline to go over briefly. Like I said, December 14th, the NOFA was released. That can be found on the city's website. Today is January 4th, the informational session. You all have made it here, so you're at least aware of that. The most important deadline will be January 25th, close of business, and that will be the deadline to submit the application via Neighborly. After the application has been submitted through Neighborly, the city will conduct a review just to determine the eligibility of the applications to ensure that all documents are uploaded and other criteria, which my colleague Cruz will go over shortly. After we have determined that all applications are in fact eligible, we will notify eligible applicants that they will be able to present to our Community Development Committee on February 8th, 2023. These will be a short form 3-minute presentation to the committee where you can present about your project and advocate for funding. After that date, the CDC, Community Development Committee, will make recommendations to the city on which projects and programs they believe should receive funding for both CDBG and ESG. The city will then work together to determine which projects and programs we intend to fund and provide an initial award notification sometime in March of this year. After that initial award notification has gone out, there will then be these projects and programs will then be taken to council sometime in April, where there will be a public hearing and opportunity for the public to comment on these projects and programs as well. Once council has approved the city's and the EDD's decision to fund projects and programs, we will then submit that in an action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development sometime in May. Upon receiving approval from HUD in May or shortly thereafter, we will then be able to enact contracts and provide funding, and the programs and projects can begin starting June 1st.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cruz Angel Coro. I'm the grant analyst for Administrative Services. Once you fill out your application, this is how we determine if it's eligible or not. First step would be application is complete with no missing information. If you're applying for CDBG funding, project is eligible to and meets one of the national objectives. If you're applying for ESG funding, project is an eligible ESG activity. Step 4 would be organization has a valid UEI number. Step 5 would be organization has a valid City of Stockton business license. Step 6 would be organization is an eligible subrecipient type 501c3. Step 7 would be the project program serves Stockton residents. Step 8 would be the project demonstrates ability to meet low to moderate income requirements. Step 9 would be all required documents are uploaded. Once filling out your application, these are the 4 criteria that will be used to determine if your project will receive funding. The one that has the most weight would be obviously the 40%, which is your program and project vision, implementation, and approach. These 2 other criteria are tied at 25, being agency capacity to develop, deliver program or project, as well as analysis of program readiness and ability to meet funding guidelines. And lastly, the 10% would be the project budget and demonstration of financial capacity. Since this does have the most weight, let's take a moment to look at it. An essential component of evaluating the project program vision, implementation, and approach is through the deliverables. A good deliverable is a deliverable that is both measurable and attainable. Here are 3 examples of weak deliverables that could be improved with just a couple of wording and a couple of focus points. The first example being reduce food insecurity. A good way to format it would be distribute 1,000 meals to Stockton residents per month. Another example would be provide counseling and mediation services for Stockton landlords and tenants. A good way to format it would be provide 30 Stockton residents with counseling, mediation services for both tenants and landlords. And lastly, another example here being improve the mental health of clients. A good way to format it would be 20 unduplicated clients that receive weekly therapy sessions with a registered therapist.
Aside from the application process, we thought it was important to share with you the reporting requirements we're expected to gather on behalf of HUD if and when doing business with the city. Although reporting does not come into play until a contract is executed, we thought it was important to share with you so that you understand what is required should funds be allocated. First, the city requires quarterly reports to be turned in on Neighborly, the same website used for turning in your application. Neighborly will use to track both the data required for HUD guidelines, as well as your program or project-specific deliverables. On the next 2 slides, crews will go over the data that must be collected for HUD reporting, but what is meant by project or program-specific deliverables is, for example, would be if a deliverable is written to your contract that says host 10 community events, then supplying us with the backup documentation to show that those events were met, or those deliverables were met, is what we're looking for there. And then next, another application that's used for reporting will be the HMIS program, the Homeless Management Information System. Collecting data for HMIS is only relevant to those organizations that specifically provide services to homeless populations. This will mainly be relevant to the ESG subrecipients. However, if funds are allocated to a CDBG project or program that serves homeless populations, there is a possibility that data will be needed to be tracked in HMIS as well.
It's important when collecting data for HUD reporting that your client intake forms collects client income as well as as well as race and ethnicity of those that you're seeking. As you can see here on the application, you have 2 tables here that's going to be very important for when collecting information from your clients. Per HUD reporting guidelines, please report client income as well as race and ethnicity as previously stated. If your program or project will be working closely with those suffering from homelessness, it is important that your client intake forms receive these 7 aspects of that information regarding name, social security, date of birth, race, ethnicity, gender, veteran status. Again, if you are working with those suffering from homelessness, you will be working with the HMIS lead agency, Central Valley Low Income Housing Corp, to help you determine the metrics for your project's reporting.
So next we're going to do an application walkthrough. Let's just take 1 second so I could share my screen with you.
Just give us one moment as we transition from the presentation over to the application itself. And as well, we see that we have one question in the chat. We will be doing a question and answers portion towards the end of the presentation, so feel free as well to type any questions you have into the chat, or feel free to ask them when we get to that portion as well.
Can you guys hear me all right? Okay. So I'm going to take you guys through the application. First, starting with the overview page. The overview page is where you'll find information regarding the NOFA, CDBG eligibility information, and our city's goals and objectives. Also at the top is where you'll find a link to the NOFA for your reference. For the purposes of today's meeting, I'm just going to be walking through the CDBG application. However, just know that the CDBG application and the ESG application are functionally the same. There are just a few minor differences based on like specific reporting requirements of ESG, but nothing too different. So if we go on to section A, eligibility. 1 second. Might need to refresh my page real quick. I'm sorry, guys. Just 1 second. For some reason, it's not letting me move on. Maybe I just need to reopen this in the bottom. Maybe let me just reopen this in another tab. I don't know why it's not letting me continue, but let me stop share and then go right back into it. 1 second. Sorry, guys.
While we're getting that figured out, I can take some time to answer a couple of the questions we're seeing in the chat. I'll start from the bottom here. Yes, if you're a nonprofit and recently applied for a business license, certainly go ahead and apply while we're waiting for the license to be approved. That application can go through, and then we can work on verifying eligibility, but it certainly can't hurt to continue applying. And for the award ceiling, so like I said at the beginning, the amount for both CDBG and ESG in total was about 984,000. The award ceiling is primarily based on the application that you submit to us via Neighborly. So the amounts that you are requesting for your project, we may not fund the full amount. However, we can fund in total between all the projects that we're funding up to that 984,000 between CDBG and ESG. And as well, just as a reminder, we will be posting an FAQs with all of the questions that are asked with complete answers, as well as a summary of the questions. So like I said, apologies for some of the technical difficulties we're experiencing. We did test this about 30 minutes ago and it worked, so I think we're having just a little bit of trouble with the internet here. Once we can sort of move on for the different components of the application, we'll start sharing. It looks like Jaleesa's, it's good progress. Yeah, okay, looks like it's working. Okay, back to you, Jaleesa.
Okay, can you guys hear me again, or am I still muted? Okay, perfect. Sorry about that, guys. My screen just froze out of nowhere, so hopefully it doesn't do that again. So following the program overview, moving on to section A, eligibility. This page is used to determine the eligibility based on HUD's CDBG requirements. So here is where you'll see, we want to see if you are meeting one of the CDBG national objectives and that you're meeting a city objective laid out in the 5-year consolidated plan, which you can find using this link right here. Next, section B is the contact information. Here's where you'll enter all the relevant contact information. And then you'll also see the executive director information as well as our point of contact. These two contacts can be the same or they can be different, but we just want to have a point of contact to be someone we can reach out to anytime throughout the duration of a program or the application process. So just making sure that point of contact is someone we can reach out to at any point. Next, moving on to section C, the funding request. Here is where you will tell us the funds you're requesting as well as what has been already secured for your project or program, as well as the cost of running your specific project or program. Next, looking to section D, your project narrative. I would say this is one of the most very important parts of your application. You really want to make sure that you're providing ample detail in your narratives as to what activities you will be conducting. The reason why we want ample detail is because you will be scored in that rubric that Cruz mentioned earlier on your narratives. So it's very important that you can show the full scope of your project here in your narratives. But I do want to mention and really go over the deliverables section. So right here in D2 is where you'll be adding your deliverables. You're going to click on add row. And then under your project activity or program service, it's going to be a brief word or phrase that describes your activity. So here I have loaded in outreach, but it can be whatever. And then description of your deliverable. Let's say your deliverable is host 10 outreach events during the 2023-2024 program year. And that's one of your deliverables. And then you can keep on adding rows as you see fit for your project. And then down here on D5 and D6, this should look familiar as this is what Cruz went over in the reporting slides. In D5, you're going to set a goal for the income levels of clients you are trying to serve. Right up here is the link to the HUD's determination of income levels for more context. Using the link, you can determine which household incomes fall within the different income limits listed here. And the next in D6 is the demographics you propose to serve based on race and ethnicity. I cannot stress this enough. When collecting data on clients, please use the income limits according to HUD and all of the race and ethnicity categories here in the application. We are mandated to report this data just as you see it here, so it's important that you collect this data as shown in the application. So now moving on to section E, we'll just proceed. Experience and capacity. Here's where you'll describe your mission, your service area, your staff, and your staff capacity. And at the bottom, you can see a similar table in D5 and D6. This is where you'll report data collected in program year 21-22 for your previous program year. And program years, just so you know, run from July 1st to June 30th. Next, moving on to Project F, project reporting. This one's very straightforward. Please use F1 to elaborate on your plans to collect and maintain data. That's very important for the purposes of your project. Next, moving on to section G, project impact. We want to know how you're going to determine your success, and we want to actually know how it will be tracked either by persons, household, or any other metric. Keep in mind that per HUD CDBG requirements, data will need to be tracked per person, but you can also use other metrics because I've seen other nonprofits using different metrics to track them, but make sure to always track your individual metrics as well. And then coming up on section 8, another very important section, instead of having you guys fill out, proposed project budget in the required document section, as it's been done in previous years, we wanted to have it built into the application so that it's all uniform for all of our applicants. So let's go through and do a test run through this, show you guys how it should be used. So up here is your personnel. So this is what you're going to be budgeting for your personnel costs. And let's say you have a position of a case manager, FTE status, full-time equivalency status. Let's say they only allocate half of their time to this program, so their FTE status will be 0.5. And let's say their annual salary is $60,000. And then let's just say their projected cost to the project, so what you're going to be billing to us, is $30,000. And then you can keep on adding personnel as your program sees fit, just right here by clicking the add row columns. Next is operations. This will be for everything else described in your project. So here you can go ahead and add a row. You have the option to select between program supplies and equipment, operations, professional services, and other. So let's, for the purpose of this, click professional services. Let's say it's for, in the narrative section, IT services. And then let's also, we want you guys to show us what you'll be spending it on, but also a short justification of what you're looking to get out of this certain line item. So maybe we could say IT services and say IT services are needed to maintain client data tracking system, for example. Then we also need a calculation for your expenditure. So maybe if it's an expenditure that you're only billing a percentage of it to this program, we want to see what your internal calculation is. So let's just say that calculation would be, let's say in total it costs $10,000, but it's only being used for, half of it's only being used on this program. So then that calculation will come up. And then this number right here, you're going to take it over to your cost. And that is what you're going to be billing to the program. And then you can add rows as you see fit and select whether they're of these 4 categories. Then finally, you're going to click submit. I can't show it on this page for some reason, but here is what it looks like on my end. You're going to click these 2 boxes, put your authorized representative signature here, and then you're also going to click here to download the certification page. You're going to sign that, upload it, and upload the file right over here. And then, oh, sorry, I just skipped over the required documents. That's section I. Here is the list of required documents. And then right below, you're going to upload all the documents as you see accordingly. But I believe that concludes my application walkthrough. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, and then we'll switch it right back over to the presentation. So just one moment.
Okay, so now we'll be entering the question and answer portion of the presentation and walkthrough. Thank you, Julie, for walking us through the application. What we'll do is I'll answer a couple of the questions that I've seen both in chat as well as some of the Q&A. We also are joined here by Casey Rain, who is working with the city in this process, and she'll also be able to answer some of these questions. Furthermore, just as a reminder, like I've said before, we will be posting an FAQ with all of these questions in writing at the conclusion of the walkthrough that will be posted to the city's website. So first, I think I'm going to let Cruz go ahead and answer one of the questions we saw in the Q&A. So I'll pass it to you, Cruz.
Hello, I'm here to answer Kate's question in the Q&A. Yes to the services section, and maybe perhaps for the capital project, it depends more on what type of capital you're trying to attain through that project. Please go ahead and send us an email with a little bit more description. The next slide following this Q&A will have the email that you can send that question with a little bit more details too. Thank you.
To answer Michelle's question about multiple employees that need to provide data, it's my understanding that the Neighborly application typically provides, is based on one single login, like an email address and a password usually. So that may need to be shared amongst folks who are entering the application, but the application can be saved periodically. And sort of on the note of just general questions about the Neighborly application, we did have a question about a way to access the application besides going through the portal. Unfortunately, that is where the application is housed, is within Neighborly. There isn't a PDF with all of the specific questions. I believe you can actually export the application to a PDF or Word document if you just want to have a list and that you can transfer to a Word document. But the actual questions live in Neighborly and need to be answered and uploaded there as well. I also see we got a private question to the host about typical award sizes. That will vary entirely depending on the scope of your project, notably. So important in your application, that's why we ask for sort of that budget narrative portion as well as that demonstration of financial capacity. We certainly may not fund the entire amount that you request in your application if you are selected for funding. But what's important is that you're requesting funding in line with your financial capacity, as well as your general capacity to administer the program and administer those funds. So the short answer is that it varies. Let's see.
Can I jump in here, Max?
Yes, please.
And so I just want to clarify a couple things. So under the application in Neighborly, there is a print application button that is over the navigation screen on the left-hand side. So I encourage you to see if that is one way that you can see all the application questions. I also want to make sure that, and this may have already been said in the beginning, I apologize, I was having system challenges and couldn't get in for the first 5 minutes, that everybody has taken a chance to read not just the Neighborly application questions, but reading through the NOFA. One of the questions was about what are vulnerable populations. And I want to be really clear about it, is that these federal funds are designed to assist low and moderate income persons within the city of Stockton to expand their economic opportunities, to support decent housing or provide suitable living environments. We really are focusing on low income persons and those with vulnerabilities, including individuals such as people who are homeless, people who are veterans, people who are children or youth, people who have disabilities, and all of this is outlined and described in the written NOFA process. I want to also target the question about income requirements. Yes, indeed, it is based on area median income. area median income, the percentage allocations and kind of how we define those are in Neighborly. They're kind of, what do we mean? We mean 30 to 50%. What do we mean, in terms of AMI? And that is our local Stockton AMI. And the reason why we are asking this, and it's so important for you to be able to put into this application, is it is required for program reporting. So should you be funded, it is required that you verify in some way that your participants are eligible for programming, that they meet this income requirements and at what level, and then for you to report out on program participants by their income level. So do keep in mind that we're not just asking it for the application, but we're asking it because we're going to need regular reports from you with that information as well. So it will be an ongoing thing that will be collected. And finally, about typical award size, as was stated earlier, there is less than $1 million of ESG and CDBG funds combined. We are looking to make several awards. Applicants that are going to be applicants should consider the fact that we are going to be making several awards. We do anticipate making anywhere between 3 and 5 ESG awards at a minimum, perhaps more, making probably more than that in terms of community development block grant awards, probably anywhere between 5 and 10 awards in CDBG awards. Please do think about, in terms of typical award sizes, we're probably looking at somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000. That's not to say that we will fund 50,000 or 100,000. It's not to say we would fund a whole application. It's not to say we wouldn't fund less or that we wouldn't fund more. All of those things are possible. But in terms of typical award sizes, it'll probably be between 50,000 and 100,000.
Thank you, Casey. I see a question here from Tanya that I want to go over. It says, can one organization apply for both CDBG and ESG? So you certainly can, but I would emphasize that it's important to check the NOFA for specific CDBG national objectives and requirements and specific ESG eligible activities, as they are different. So before you apply, take a look at the NOFA and the requirements of each program so that you're not applying to the wrong funding source. But if you are eligible for both, then you can go right ahead.
On a similar note as well, I see a question from Jesse right above Tanya's question about multiple programs. CDBG and ESG funding can be used to fund programs in conjunction with other funding sources, and that is actually outlined within the application throughout the, I believe one of the sections is called funding sources, actually in the application. And so we would love to see what other funding sources or anticipated funding needs you may have for the program for which you're applying for funding. For example, if you already have secured half of your funding from another grant source and you need CDBG or ESG to supply the other half, that certainly is eligible. It's just important that we know exactly how those funds are being used.
There's 2 more questions in the chat. Pat, how you doing? I see that you tried the print this step on the upper right. Don't try that one. It's on the left over the navigation panel. It says print application. I'm hesitant to go back to the actual Neighborly screen in case it freezes on us again, but can one of you do that while I answer Robert's question?
Sure thing.
Okay, Robert, your question is, does the city make any funding recommendations or is it all just decided by the committee? So just to clarify, there is a city staff review process. We are going to definitely review all the applications, make sure they meet eligibility criteria, and various other um, kind of technical components. And then yes, the committee does make the final recommendations.
Yes, so I don't know if you guys can hear me, but there is an option, like Casey said, to print application right over here and then right here at print step. So it does look like you can do that if you'd like.
Yeah, I think the print step one was the one that Ms. Barrett I was having challenges with, but I think that we've tested the print application and that seemed to work on our end. So let's see if there are other questions.
Let's see, I can answer just a moment here. I can see a question from, let's see, Michelle Rosado here. So the way we'll be handling reimbursements for this upcoming year, what the general plan as of now, and this will be further specified in a contract should we indeed provide funding to a program. When we receive quarterly reports, we will also take reimbursement requests at that time for the most recent quarter. So those would be in about 3-month periods. And then immediately upon reception of that, in general, the city has a 30-day window in which to review the documentation, ensure that everything is sufficient, and get that reimbursement processed. There may be some back and forth between both the city and the subrecipient if further documentation is needed or if there are questions. But all those reimbursements will generally be processed within our plan as of this upcoming year is to process them within the first couple weeks of the new quarter each time. For Kendra's question beneath that about submitting a budget, we are I believe in the required documents section. I believe Julissa might be able to answer this. She can see if we I know we had some conversation on whether or not we wanted to request a project budget separate from that which was submitted in Neighborly. Do you recall, Julissa, if that was input into the required documents section?
So there are two different portions for filling out your budget. What's built in that I showed a demonstration of, that is for your specific project budget. However, in the required documents section, there is a place for you guys to upload your organization operating budget. So there's two different places for your budget, but your project budget will be built in with an application, I believe in section H, sorry.
H. And just to clarify that, the project budget in Neighborly in section H that Julissa is talking about is specific to the project that you are requesting funds on. The budget that we're asking you to upload is your organizational operating budget. And we use that to kind of align your request with a review of agency capacity. So demonstration of your organization's financial history are important for our technical review. So that's why we ask for the proof through the required forms in section I. Regarding a question that John Mendelson posted in the chat, this reads the demographic reporting. HUD standards typically have ethnicity broken out separate from race, but past reports has asked for the number of certain races subsorted by ethnicity. Basically, what's going to happen? And here's the short answer that is a little bit complicated, which is there are different race ethnicity reporting requirements for CDBG and ESG grantees. And if you open both of the applications, you will see that that is the one area where there is really a difference between CDBG and ESG applications. And the reason why is that there are separate federal reporting formats that we are looking to fulfill. So your ESG ones are all going to be going through HMIS. So we use the HMIS, the Homeless Management Information System reporting requirements on our ESG applications, and our community development block grant funds are going through a different reporting that's called IDIS, and so we use the IDIS format. So it is different. One has ethnicity broken out separate from race, and one has races subsorted by ethnicity. So do your best. If you need assistance with that, reach out to us directly, and we'll try to help walk you through that.
Thank you, Casey. I see a question here from Paula. She says, if you just apply for rent, utilities, etc., and no staff, what do you fill in for staff? So for that, I don't know if it's a required category, but if it is, I would just put NA across the board and put zeros, and then you should be fine.
To answer Pat's question in the chat, let me get it pulled up here. Just about starting up and having expenses. So the reimbursement process works as expenses are incurred. So based on the agreed upon budget that the city and the subrecipient have decided to do, what will generally happen is as you, the subrecipient, or the project or program incurs any amount of financial burden that is specifically an eligible activity for the program, that documentation can then be submitted to the city, like we said at the beginning of each quarter, where you request those reimbursements. If for a particular quarter you don't have any expenses to report, by no means, you do not have to submit an invoice. But what's important is that we are receiving those quarterly reports with the data necessary.
I want to speak to just organizations that are just starting up. Separate from this application, the city of Stockton is partnering with the United Way on a local capacity building project to help emerging nonprofits or maybe organizations that are just starting or have been around for a couple years, work through in a peer group how to take their organization to the next step. If you are an emerging nonprofit, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to the United Way of San Joaquin. Again, the city of Stockton is partnering with them on a local capacity building project. It is just a great opportunity, and I just wanted to give a plug for that project. Again, the partnership between City of Stockton and United Way.
And thank you for that plug. It is a very awesome program that we at the city are certainly very excited about for our emerging nonprofits. So that is something to look forward to for all of our new nonprofits in the area. I see Michelle Rosado has asked a question. Are a copy of the slides available? Yes, we will be posting a copy of the slides to the city's website. Those will probably be available much sooner. And furthermore, I think as we've stated before, there will be this recording of the presentation will be uploaded to the website as long with an FAQ summary. Chat. I don't see any unanswered questions, but we still have a little bit of time. If folks have any, feel free to flag us down or let us know.
We can actually show the last slide. This is our contact information. So if you'd like to take the time to jot it down, this is where you can ask us even more questions. You can find here my contact as well as Max's contact. So if you have any follow-up questions that you didn't get to ask or you would want more information on, here's both of our contacts.
I see a question from Samara about specific type of documentation required to show income. She asks, is there a specific type of documentation that will be required to show participant income level for reporting purposes? I think Jaleesa may have the more accurate answer on this, so I'll pass it to her.
So that is within our application. It does say how you choose to report your income levels or client eligibility. So that can be done through self-certification forms that you would develop in your client intake forms, or that can be verified by client pay stubs or any information relating to their income. So client pay stubs and firsthand documents would be the best, but also we do accept self-certification forms from clients on the intake forms.
And just to add to that, if I recall correctly, I believe we listed a couple of options within the application itself. So if you do get to that portion of the application, you'll see that there are a couple of ideas, including self-certification. Let's see. Is there a care? Go on.
I just want to add before we jump into the character or word count limit, another example of self-certification or easy certification could be kind of verification that someone is homeless. Therefore, we understand that they are unable to, you know, have much of an income. So we'll kind of take that. And you could also use another party's verification. So if they are currently, if they've already been verified through another entity, like through the local housing authority, then we would also kind of accept that as well. And then Max and Julissa, can I jump that back to you for character or word count limit?
For sure. It's my understanding that there isn't a specific character or word limit within the Neighborly application. That's what I understand. If you do encounter problems with that, feel free to shoot us an email. But I don't believe that we've put any restrictions on that or that the Neighborly application has either. I don't believe that was part of our setup.
That said, we are going to be reviewing all of them. Please use words succinctly. Some of the questions are set up as short answer questions. Go ahead and feel like you can do short answer questions. Some of the questions are set up in paragraph format. Please read through all the questions and make sure that your answers are answered under the question in which they are asked. Don't answer everything in the first question and then nothing in the follow-up questions. Make sure that you are succinct in answering the question, and then if there's additional information that you want to give, it's probably going to be suitable for a different question. And just make sure that you put the answers in the correct place.
It took the words right out of my mouth. Exactly what we want. So be making sure to be succinct and answer the question that's being asked. That is sort of important as we review, because we will be, as Casey said, reviewing all of them pretty thoroughly. Okay.
I just saw a question from Sandria. She asks, how does my organization qualify to apply? Because her organization is a nonprofit that provides food and basic needs to those in need. This, again, I will point you to the NOFA that talks about all the CDBG national objectives and ESG eligible activities. It's really important that you read up on those activities to see if your project is eligible, because that's the first thing in determining your eligibility for this round of funding.
I've also just put a link in the chat to our housing page. It's stocktonca.gov/housing. That you can find the NOFA to download, which will contain more information, as Lisa said, on eligibility as an application process, as well as the link to the application itself and other useful information.
And I will just go ahead and say that food security is important in our community. It is an eligible activity. I think we have that in the NOFA. But
Yes.
food, if it provides benefit to low and moderate income people, then it's a CDBG eligible activity. We would call that, we would put it under public services. Is that under public services?
I believe so. And I believe that also falls
Yeah.
under the 5-year consolidated plan too.
Yeah, food security is part of our 5-year consolidated plan as a local priority.
And so and just to perhaps even expand on that too, as far as organizations being eligible, there are a couple of different types of organizations that are eligible in general to receive funding just as a base criteria. So I believe Cruz mentioned earlier that one of those, for example, is a 501c3 organization. Um, so a nonprofit. There are other types which are specified both in the NOFA as well as in the drop-down list within the application itself as you're selecting. So in general, that is where you can find some information on your specific organization type being eligible.
And for more information about our consolidated plan, please do see our the City of Stockton's Economic Development has a housing division. At the bottom of the web page for the housing division, our consolidated plan, the 2020 to 2025 consolidated plan.
Perfect.
All right, I don't see any more questions here in the chat. So we're going to go ahead and conclude. I want to say thank you to Max and Cruz for presenting alongside me. Thank you to Katia for handling all the slides for us. And thank you to Casey for helping us answer questions. If you guys have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to either Max or I using the contact information here. The link to the video will be on our housing page within the next day, as well as the slides to accompany it. So that link that Max put in there should take you to where this meeting information will be. We hope this has been informative and that you have the tools you need to succeed and write a great application. But thank you again for joining us today, and have a nice rest of your day. Thank you.